Thank you very much to the conference for inviting Bailey and I to speak. Okay, excellent. And so the last presentation was fairly agricultural and fairly rural. Ours is going to be a little bit more urban, but similar idea of using education and encouraging action. So in particular this morning we're talking about the City of Red Deer's Environmental Master Plan and some of the action-oriented environmental programs that have come from that plan and that are helping us to implement that plan. But first, when we're starting here, what is an environmental master plan? So the environmental master plan is a document that the City of Red Deer approved in 2011. It contains environmental sustainability strategies for the City of Red Deer, and certainly there was environmental policy throughout the organization, but this was the first kind of combined document and very focused document that the city had done in terms of environmental sustainability. It has immediate actions, it also has long-term, so up to 25 years. It has some actions for the city as a corporation, so they're a major employer, they have a fleet, they have facilities, so things that they can do as a corporation, but also things that residents and the community can do and that the city can facilitate and support. It's broad, it has several focus areas, including water. We're going to focus, Bailey and I are going to focus a little bit this morning on the water piece, but I will touch on some of the other focus areas. And then the whole point of the plan is to set targets and move us ways of measuring if we're moving in the direction of those targets. So Council accepted the document unanimously in 2011, not as a bylaw or not as a statutory plan, but more as a guiding document and a way of thinking about decision making, budget decisions, and operational actions in the city. The Environmental Master Plan contains, like a lot of plans, it contains a vision, of course, for environmental sustainability. It moves through some core directions, so some real principles, things like show leadership, things like engage the public, so just some of those core directions. Then, as I mentioned, it contains 7 focus areas, of which water is one of them, but also air, also energy, also built environment, transportation. You see some of the others. And the more we get into it, the more that we realize water has some separate actions, but they also, of course, link in with the other actions. So things that are good for air sometimes are also good for water, or good for waste reduction, or also good for water protection. The document also contains a benchmarking tool and targets. So this is where we get into the things that are a little bit less motherhood and a little bit more detailed, and help us establish what should be measured and where to aim in the future. And then we have actions and strategies. So we have very specific actions that can be done in the City of Red Deer to get us to those targets and the ways of moving forward on those. So I mentioned the 7 focus areas, of which water is one of them. And our benchmarking tool, I just want to touch on that a little bit before we get into the more specifics on water. So under each of those 7 focus areas, air, water, ecology, transportation, built form, waste, and transportation, we looked at what are some of the metrics? What are the things that we could measure? What is a good measurement for water quality? What is a good measurement for waste? In the case of our plan, it's waste reduction, so it's number of kilograms of waste per person per year in our city. Where is Red Deer at today? So what is our baseline? And that would really be something, if you're working on this kind of plan for your organization, you want to know where are you at today before you set a target. And that's just makes sense. And sometimes that's easier said than done. And then what are some of the other, what would be a suitable target? So we looked at other cities, we looked at other communities that are maybe the same size or are also leaders in that field. And that helped our council, that helped our consultants and our steering committee kind of come up with some proposed Red Deer targets of where Red Deer should be. And Bailey will be more specific in what the targets are for our water area. And then the strategies and actions of how we're going to move forward. So that was kind of the thinking or the progress that we made working through the plan. And you'll know in your watershed organizations or in any organization, when you set out to do these kind of plans, there's tons of things you could do, there's tons of actions and strategies. So of course ours was the same, many actions came forward, many different options, and so we had to also look at prioritizing those actions, because many of them are important, many of them are good actions to do, but we can't do everything. So the plan considered prioritizing them and looked at the expected impact. So some things are going to have a high impact, medium impact, or lower impact, of course. And then we also weighed that against the level of investment, either financial or staff time. And so some things that you would get maybe a huge impact out of are also going to cost you a lot of money. So they maybe didn't rank as high as a priority. But other things that are maybe a medium cost would only have a low impact. So again, they may not rank as high. Some things that had a low investment, maybe a low return, but you could do it quickly. So we did use a prioritization tool and assigned things either top priority, medium, or longer term priority. So we did promise in this session to talk a little bit about the opportunities and challenges that we've had in implementing this plan. So certainly in terms of opportunities, it generated lots of environmental awareness in our community and I think among our staff and our stakeholders, but it also raised the bar of expectations. So it raised the bar for how to do public participation. We had a lot of public engagement, so we've set that bar a little bit higher. Benchmarking, so that actually getting those numbers, using that science. This would be one of the plans that the city had, one of the first that actually attached a lot of numbers to things that we wanted to do. So that's kind of changed the way we're looking at things. And then it linked the environment to a lot of other departments and a lot of other issues in our community. Opportunity for partnerships. We have lots of partners who are helping us implement this, so that's been an excellent opportunity. And we are seeing change happening. And on the tables, I have our annual report for 2011, which was the first year, it was only 8 months of the year from the time the plan was adopted, but it tells you some of the change and some of the results. So if you're interested in that, feel free to take a copy of that with you. The challenges, when we do any kind of plan, we know there's challenges. And I think the big thing is we want to see different results in our environmental sustainability, so we're tackling things in a different way or tackling things that we haven't tackled before, and that can be tough, that can be a challenge. It's a long-term plan, so we're at it day in, day out. And it's been interesting, we're going around to some other departments to try and get data, and they're saying, didn't you collect this last year? Yes, that's the whole point, that we're continuing to monitor it and that we're going to do this every year and that we're going to keep going at this. So just making that shift that when the plan is done and been to council, doesn't mean it's done. Your work is just beginning. Funding, of course, goes without saying. Kind of coordinating with other agencies, other partners, so we're continually working on that. Integrating it into other work plans in the city and keeping it top of mind, so that kind of goes back to that comment of, didn't you do this last year? Or sometimes we get a comment from an unrelated department, not necessarily with environment in their name, and they'll say, well, that's your job. No, environmental sustainability is the job of everyone in the organization, and that's, keeping that top of mind can be tough. Collecting the data is a huge task, and then ongoing engagement is also a challenge, but we're working through those things. Plan has 115 actions, so you can see why moving that forward is a challenge. 27 of those are top priority, a few of those are water, and then we're working with, as I said, all kinds of partners, stakeholders, residents to implement it, and we are moving forward. And I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague Bailey to talk more specifics.
So as Nancy had mentioned, water is one of the 7 focus areas of the environmental master plan, and it is probably pretty obvious as to why it was selected. But in addition to that, the community does need to shift its focus from consumption and supply to conservation. So the overall goal of the water section in the environmental master plan is to improve the quality of our water resources and increase water conservation. There are 4 top priority actions for the water section, and they include preparing an integrated stormwater management plan, as well as developing water use standards for city buildings, and this is something that the current city is currently working on. We have conducted some assessments of our buildings and looking at now recommendations and ways to move forward with water conservation. As well, reviewing the water rate structures, and again, this is something that we have progressed on. Currently, in the fall, late fall, the water and wastewater rates have slowly, through phases, started to change, and then we're moving towards a more user-pay system. And the intent of that is that hopefully people will begin to recognize the value of water and think about conservation. As well, installing new automated metering is on the top priority action list. So the first metric in the water section is to measure potable water consumption, and this we're measuring in liters per capita per day. This measure is readily available to the city. We track or have the data available to know how much potable water is being consumed in the city. So that makes it easy for us in the way that we don't have to go searching for this data, because we've had some challenges in other sections and even in this section with not knowing where we're standing, where our baseline is. So that made this a good metric to select. In 2009, our consumption was 242 liters per capita per day in the residential, and that has decreased in 2012 to 210. That's a decrease of 13%. So looking at our 2015 target, we've surpassed that, which we are happy about, but we still have work to do. The ICI as well, we have achieved our 8% reduction. We are now at 120 liters per capita per day. So again, we've decreased it by 11% and surpassed our 8% reduction target for 2015. In addition to the top priority actions, there are a number of actions that we are planning to take and have already started on for reducing water consumption. These actions include assisting ICI customers with water audits, creating a rainwater capture program and using this rainwater for irrigation, as well as working with partners to encourage on-site water collection, providing incentives for low-flow fixtures. The city currently offers a toilet rebate for people who are replacing a high-flow toilet with a low-flow toilet. So that encourages people to conserve water in that way, and at some point I'm sure we'll consider switching to another incentive. Promoting the Naturescaping contest, which aims to educate and encourage people to conserve water in their yards. This is something that the plan had in it. However, we did promote the contest for 2 years, and uptake we found was a bit tricky, so we are currently not doing a contest, but we still do offer courses and education on naturescaping, and we are considering other actions kind of to replace this in the yard, as well as exploring wastewater effluent on golf course, and that will mostly be considered at Riverbend Golf Course. The next metric is water quality of receiving water bodies, and this metric is currently to be determined. So that kind of goes back to the point I was making of why we chose the other one, water consumption. This one we didn't have the data available at the time the plan was created to have a baseline. This metric considers the water quality, aims to assess and reduce urban development impact on the environment, and in particular on our rivers and creeks. The city has initiated a study on the river and its tributaries, and it will examine the current nutrient and sediment loadings from the city and be looking at how to minimize or reduce their impacts. The first stage will likely be completed in late summer or fall of 2013. And if this is something you're interested in learning a little bit more about, I believe there's a presentation tomorrow assessing and managing the City of Red Deer's impacts on water quality, and I think it'll be related to this metric. So there are additional actions that we will be taking to help improve our water quality. We don't have our baseline set, but that doesn't mean we can't get started. So some of these include monitoring the quality and flow and quantity of our stormwater, reduce our water quality monitoring along the creeks and tributaries, partnering overland storm drainage and constructed wetlands with parks, green spaces, walkways, I think was in there, open areas, through bioswales or reconstructed waterways, as well as reviewing the salt management plan focusing on minimizing salt use. And that one is an easy win, I think, for the city, because that's something we have direct control over, and it's not a high cost item to implement. There are some additional programs that we are focusing on, and these ones are primarily education related or focused. The city does have a Yellowfish Row program, or we do promote the Yellowfish Row program, and that is focused on the schools and educating children on the stormwater system. And the main message or focus of this program is to educate the kids that what enters the storm drain is discharged directly into the river. So just be conscious a little bit of what you're using in your yards, or understanding that the oil dripping on your driveway is gonna make it directly into the river. So hopefully the kids will take this message home and pass it along. We do promote the use of rain barrels, and we have partnered with the Carriewood Nature Center to offer rain barrels. Last weekend at the home show, actually, the city was offering a $10 rebate or coupon for rain barrels, so that is another way we do promote the use of them, as well as home water audit kits. The city hands them out at various events, and we do provide education on how to use them and the components of them, and educating homeowners on how they can, quick wins in their house as to how they can reduce consumption and make their water fixtures, I guess, more water efficient. World Water Day events. We celebrate World Water Day, or we have for the past couple of years, and this aim is just to focus on educating residents on different water-focused items. This year we will be looking at, or playing a documentary, and it'll be focused on uncovering the state of Canada's fresh water, and that's next week. Healthy Yards program. This is, or the What Not to Flush story. There's some information on the tables, and that's just something new we are starting to promote, and it just looks at what we should not be flushing down our toilets or our drains that most people are often commonly do. And for example, pharmaceuticals, which the wastewater treatment plant doesn't necessarily have the capabilities of removing, and ultimately will have adverse impacts on our water ecosystem. And then the Healthy Yards program, which is an umbrella program for all our yard-related programs in the city, and our composting at home program that we're working on now falls under this Healthy Yards. And composting maybe doesn't appear to have direct benefits to water, but it does reduce the amount or the need for synthetic fertilizer if you use it as a top dressing on your lawn, for example, and ultimately the runoff coming off your property is healthier. So some key achievements in the water area that we were happy to report in 2011 was that we decreased our water consumption by more than 8% per person. We increased our participation in naturescaping by 25%, and I know previously I indicated that this wasn't the most successful of programs, so that doesn't necessarily mean that increasing it by 25% meant that we had that many more applicants. We started work on the water quality monitoring study, and we are beginning in 2011. We started working on our water conservation standards for city buildings. And we will finish off with this quote.